Today I have my labor and delivery story. I gave birth. Hi. So today's video is going to be just talking about my labor and delivery experience. I plan to have a whole pregnancy experience video coming up soon. But yeah, I have a son. What's up? I feel kind of weird filming this because, to be honest, at 22 I never imagined being pregnant and then having a baby, and sometimes it's just it's amazing. So anyway, we're gonna film this today. Yes, I'm again not wearing makeup. It has been a rough time since delivering, and I'm going to go into all of that in this video today, and just kind of talk about all that. But I'm finally looking better. This is better. We'll talk about that. So I guess I'll just start from the beginning. So we have been to labor and delivery quite a few times while I was pregnant. Quite a few times. I'm talking probably 20. I got diagnosed with something called irritable uterus. So I was constantly having contractions similar to Braxton Hicks, but they were not putting me into labor. So I was constantly having them. It basically means my uterus was constantly spazzing. I guess this is the movement. I don't really know. So, you know, I was put on Precaria, which is a medication that can stop preterm labor and those contractions. And it would work most of the time. And then towards the end of the pregnancy at 37 weeks, I was told to stop it because really around 38 weeks, it was 37 and a half weeks I was told to stop it, because at 38 weeks, technically it's considered a full term. It's still kind of considered preterm, but for the most part it's still considered full term at 38 weeks. So I was told to stop it. So I was still kind of struggling with the pain. I was dealing with constant contractions. So I really wasn't, it was really nervous. No doctors could really tell me, if I would really know if I was going into labor. So really the whole time I was pregnant, I was constantly worried that I would miss out on the epidural, because I'm gonna be honest, I was terrified of the pregnancy pain, or the labor pain. So I was always a little anxious about that. So I guess, yeah. So we did that. It was kind of scary the whole time I was on that, because I was constantly thinking maybe I'm in labor, and then we would get sent home and I wasn't in labor. And I always kind of felt kind of dumb because, you know, it was real pain I was having, and they really couldn't stop it at 37 weeks. They really were not able to stop it because we're getting closer to full term there. So it was kind of like I was constantly in pain towards the end of my pregnancy. So on August 5th, yeah, August 5th at 9:30, I think it was 9:30, I was watching TLC. By the way, I was watching The Family Chantel, which, you know, just something to remember. And I was sitting on the couch, and I wasn't wearing, when I was pregnant, I'd wear a lot of times my husband's shirts and no pants, because it was just comfortable that way. I didn't really like pants. It was just nothing really fits at this point. I'm huge. I feel horrible. So the whole idea though, before that, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So I went to my last OB appointment that Thursday. Yeah. The appointment was August 5th. So I went on August 5th to my last OB appointment, which, yeah, August 5th, and I was told that I was actually dealing with a problematic placenta. So basically I had a grade 3 placenta. By 41 weeks you already kind of have a grade 3 placenta, because you're kind of you're kind of towards the end of your pregnancy, and the placenta's already dying at that point anyway. But I was at 38.2 at that point, or 38.1 at that point. No, I was 38.2 at that point. I was 38.2, and so they were like, she's noticed that, and I did that stress test, and everything came back positive. I was going to come every week for the stress test until he was due, but really she was talking about it 39 weeks induction, because my placenta was grade 3. It had little calcium spots on it, and she was a little worried, and he was also getting bigger. So when I went in for my last ultrasound at 37 weeks, I was going every week at that point. At 37 weeks, I was told that he was going to be 7, was it 7'7"? 7'7", maybe 7, no. Maybe it was 7'8", something like that, 7'8" or something like that. And she was already a little worried because I'm 4'11", and I'm not overweight. So it was already kind of that's a big baby for me. So she was already looking at induction that next week. We were going to sweep my membranes. The next appointment after that day, they were going to sweep my membranes and start trying to get me induced. So, but we didn't need that. So as I was going back, Family Chantel was on, and it like at the most random time a commercial, and then it came back on, and I was sitting there on the couch with my legs crossed, and all of a sudden I feel this little bit of pressure, and then all this water came out, and I knew instantly what it was, because you know, everyone tells you, you know, your water break is going to be a big gush. Mine was a pretty big gush. It just kind of kept coming out. Kind of like when you're peeing, but I wasn't peeing. It was just constantly coming out. And so I was kind of like, oh my God. So Kylie was at work. That's my husband. He was at work. And I actually called my mom first, because she had just gotten done staying with me for a little while, and she went back to Huntsville. So it was an hour-and-a-half drive. And so at that point, she was pulling into her driveway. I call her, I'm like, hey Mom, what are you doing? And she's like, nothing, I'm just getting home, I'm gonna unload some stuff. It's like, Mom, my water broke. So I went into the bathroom, because it was just constantly still coming out. It wasn't, at this point it was still not as much as the first time it was coming out, but it was definitely coming out, and I was having to sit on the toilet because it was coming out so much. So this video is going to be kind of longer, by the way. I have kind of a traumatic experience, so we're going to keep going. So I called Kylie. He sent me the voicemail, because he works retail and while he's as a student, and so he can't talk on the phone. Well, I called him again. He's like, Jenna, I'm like, what's up? Like, I'm at work. I said my water broke, and he's like, oh my God. And so he went to his manager. They already know I was pregnant, so he was able to come home. He came home and got me. We pottied our dog, and we grabbed the last few things we needed. Our labor and delivery bags were already, hospital bags were already in the car. His car seat was already in the car. We were prepared, and off we went. So we made a few phone calls. Kylie's parents we had to call, and Kylie was like so cute. He was calling every one of his friends. It was kind of funny. So we got to the hospital, I want to say about 10:30, and at that point I was not having contractions. Even the little contractions I was having had went away mostly that day. I was having, like, throughout that day at that doctor's appointment, I was having contractions lightly, but it wasn't like anything big. And I was still at 1.5 centimeters dilated, and I think at that point I was 80 to 90% effaced. So I was getting closer to being all the way thinned, but I was not fully dilated. So we get to the hospital. I see my favorite nurse. Funny story, this nurse had helped me the past 2 times at labor and delivery. So she knew who I was. I was like, hey, my water broke, so I think this is the actual real time. So we were put instantly in a labor and delivery room, and I wasn't having contractions yet. So she did the little amniotic fluid swab, and they sent it off. And it takes about an hour to get back. So about an hour later, I was kind of starting to feel something, and she goes, you ready to have a baby? So that was terrifying. So that was like 11:30. So it was 11:30, and so I really didn't start having pain until about 1:30. I was having light amounts of contractions. It was like the normal ones I had been having. So they ended up putting me on Pitocin. I cannot remember words. Pitocin. So they put me on Pitocin, and I was on Pitocin till the whole time. So I was in. We need to get ahead of ourselves. So I decided to get the epidural at, I want to say 7:30 the next morning, because the Pitocin was revving it up. I don't think I was, and to myself, I don't think I was in enough pain to really get the epidural quite yet, but I decided to go ahead and get it because they were actually delivering twins in C-section, and that would have tied up the anesthesiologist for 2.5 hours. And so I knew at that point, I don't know if I could have waited 2.5 hours, you know what I mean? So I wanted to just go ahead and get it. I didn't want to, like, I was terrified of what was going to happen. So they put it in. Epidural was so easy. It did not hurt. I'm good with needles, and it barely was anything. The lidocaine that was the worst. Everything else was easy. So, I'm put back, you know, everything's good. It started helping, and then I instantly started feeling really numb, which is what you're supposed to feel, because when you get an epidural, it's kind of like from down below. You're supposed to still feel a little bit of pressure and a little bit of things, but you're not supposed to feel like intense pain. So give about 2-3 hours. Still not quite progressing as fast. I'm still on Pitocin. They're upping my Pitocin. This whole time they were upping my Pitocin. So I guess it was like around 1, maybe before that. I don't remember the times. But we got, I started noticing my left leg was much number than my right leg. And then it hit me. The epidural had completely almost worn off. I think it did completely wear off, because my left leg, it was only my leg though. So like from my kneecap down, I couldn't feel anything. So I was in the most intense pain of my entire life. I was already at 7 centimeters dilated, and it was I thought I was going to die. I was, no joke, I literally thought I was going to take the needle out of my arm and stuff it into my head. It was the amount of pain. I couldn't prepare myself. It was the most amount of pain I've ever had. And I give women who have natural births props, because I could never do that. So I'm literally, the issue of my contractions though, which might have made it a little worse for me, is my contractions were quick, and they were also long. So what normal people would be like max 1 minute, 30 seconds to 1 minute contractions, mine were lasting 2 to 3 minutes. It was horrible. So they would cut 2 to 3 minutes, it would go down and it would come back up at 2 to 3 minutes. So it was really, really fast and really long contractions. And they decided that they kept bringing the anesthesiologist, and he kept trying things. And he's like, we've got to take the epidural and re-put it in. So that was bad, because I was already to the point where I was shaking nonstop from the pain. I was having to hee-hee-hoo the whole time, and it was just really, really bad. I could not breathe, and it was the amount of pain was just really, really bad, to be honest. It is the most intense pain I've ever had, and it really kind of traumatized me, to be honest. So I had to be, because when you get the epidural, you have to be flat, you have to have your chin to your chest, you have to flex your back out, and you have to hold on to something. Sometimes the nurses, sometimes something else, and you have to be as still as you can. And when they put in the second epidural, I didn't, it's fine, it didn't hurt. At this point, everything else was hurting, that was nothing. So they got it in, and I laid back down. Instantly, the pain was still there for a little while, because it takes a good 15 to 30 minutes for an epidural to fully work, but it was starting to kind of help a little bit at that point. So countdown 2-3 hours later, we're still at 7 centimeters, they're upping my Pitocin, and my birth photographer comes in. She's wonderful. Heather was wonderful, and I'm actually getting my photos today, so if I get the photos, I might include some in this video. But about 2 or 3 hours later, she's in there, and I start realizing my leg's going numb again. Like, both of my legs were numb, but my right leg was starting to wear off again, and my anxiety shot up. I was just like, I got a real quick nap, and I was really nervous the whole time, because I was like, oh my god, I cannot go through that pain again. Especially, I was at 9 centimeters at this point. So they said, we're going to give you about an hour, and then we'll come back and check you. So I was sleeping. Heather and my husband were talking. My mom was also she was going to be at you can have 3 people as your support people in our hospital, which was wonderful. I had my mom, Kylie, and the birth photographer. So those were my 3 people. Heather was talking to Kylie. My mom was off kind of dozing. And the nurse was, I didn't even realize the nurse was in there. Jenny came back working. She went off shift and came back to check on me. She was wonderful. And so they checked me, and I'm 10 centimeters dilated. She goes, I'm calling it. And so my doctor came in, and we started getting ready to push. And it's really funny what my mom said, because my mom, in case you guys don't know, I'm adopted. That was a real reason why I wanted my mom in there. She could not have biological children, so that was something she never got to experience, and I for sure wanted her to experience that with me. So she was on this side holding my leg. Heather was on, no, the nurse was on this side. Heather was off taking photos, and Kylie was just on my side talking to me and like able to hold me. But I had to hold my leg. Like, my legs were in stirrups, but I had to pull them back. So I had to pull my legs back, and then they also changed at one point where I could pull this, like, it's like a little thing attached to the stirrups where I could pull myself kind of in. It was it made my arms really sore, but that was the better way to do it. So I pushed. That pushing was really, really hard. I was terrified the whole time, because I have asthma, and I knew myself. I've tried to hold my breath through that. You have to hold your breath for 10 seconds 3 to 4 times. So they'll count slow for 10 seconds, give you a second to breathe, and then you have to do it again 3 to 4 times. It's really horrible, because they'll count so slow, and then they'll give you like 1 second to breathe, and then they'll count so slow again, and you're like, ah. But I had a little bit of oxygen. It wasn't quite helping. So I was definitely, my mom's like, why didn't you just like give up a few times? Like, not give up, but like tell me you can't make the full 10 seconds. I was like, I was actually scared that the doctor would yell at me. Like, no joke, I was terrified the doctor would yell at me. Now, she's not a mean person, I was just scared of it. So, so we were there, I'm pushing. I pushed for an hour and 10 minutes before he was born, and I wasn't quite progressing as much as I should have. So my doctor decided, even though she doesn't like to use the vacuum, we decided to use the vacuum because he was just not, he was just not going to come out. So he was going to come out, it would have just been probably a 3-4 hour pushing session, probably, if I would have continued to push. So they put the vacuum on his head and they got him out maybe within, I want to say 10-20 minutes, and he was out. And big thing was kind of hard for me was they got him out, but to get him out they pushed on my stomach really. They had to push him out and pull him out, so it was really painful. That's not the norm, but they had to do that because he was so big. He came out, he was beautiful. He was 8 pounds 4 ounces. Yes, 8 pounds 4 ounces. That's why he was so, that's why we were struggling. And I got to hold him for just a second, and then they kind of got to cut the cord, and then they took him away, and not took him away, but like took him right next to me, and like they got him clean real quick. And I started noticing my doctor wished I did tear. I had a 2nd-degree tear a little bit, so she was stitching me up, and that's kind of where my memory stops, because I ended up losing almost a fluids bag full of blood. And my mom supposedly said I told the doctor I'm gonna pass out, and then I also told the doctor, I think I remember saying I'm gonna pass out. I kept passing out, and then I told the doctor at one point, I don't remember this because I was so gone, I'm gonna die. And she goes, don't say that, because when a doctor, I knew this from past history, when a patient tells a doctor they're going to die, it usually means they're going to die. So so I'm passing out. I don't remember really much from there. I remember passing in and out, them trying to wake me up, I remember that. And then they were finally able to get me stable. I was able to finally breathe. I will insert some pictures. I was very puffy from all the fluids and all the stuff they were having to give me, and was finally able to do skin to skin for an hour. But I was really weak. My blood pressure went down to 68, no. 68, something. It was really, really low. I'll have to remember and I'll put it here or something. It was really low to the point where I don't know if they wouldn't have been so active, and if my doctor hadn't stayed by my side, I don't know if I would have made it. So, so yeah, he was beautiful. We stayed in the hospital so I gave birth Tuesday night. At 8:51 he was born, so I stayed in the hospital from that Tuesday night till Friday morning. I was discharged on Thursday afternoon because Arthur had a little bit of signs of jaundice, and he had a little bit of a hemoglobin from the vacuum. They decided to just keep him one extra night, and the pediatrician had already told me that anyway, so I was prepared for that. So I got to stay in our room. I was just not a patient anymore, so I got to stay in the room. It was fine. They treated me really well. And we got to take him home, and it was beautiful, and we've been home. And then it kind of started hitting rock bottom again. When I was released from the hospital, my hemoglobin levels was a 7.1. Normal is a 10 to 12. I had a 7.1, but I was prescribed iron 3 times a day. So supposedly the idea was that was going to raise it up. If I started feeling worse, then I would come back and we'd look into blood transfusion options. Usually blood transfusions happen at 7 or below. So I was almost there, but my doctor decided not to. So let's see, what day is it? It's Thursday. So on Tuesday night, I woke up in the middle of the night after feeding Arthur, and I noticed I was shaking uncontrollably. I was chattering, like my teeth were chattering. I was sitting there shaking uncontrollably. We had to call an ambulance for me, and I was in the ER for maybe like 9 to 10 hours. And they decided, they did all these tests. The ER doctors were amazing. They ran every test possible, and it all came back that really it was my blood levels. So we got up to a room. They took me back to postpartum because that's where my doctor was, and she was going to oversee my care at that point. So they brought me up to postpartum again, and I stayed in a room, and they watched it. They tried to give me a blood transfusion that day, but because I was running a fever, and they thought the fever was from the blood transfusion, because if you go up 2 degrees, they have to stop it. When I came into the postpartum room, I was already at 100.4, and by the time the blood transfusion stopped, it was 103. But we found out later that was not what that's from. We still don't know what the fever was from. It might have just been from me feeling, I might have had a quick virus, I don't know. But anyway, that next morning we found out my hemoglobin levels were at 6.7 or 6.6, so my doctor came and asked me if I wanted to try a blood transfusion again, and I said please, because I think that's the only thing that's going to help. So she decided to give me 2 units of blood. I got the 2 units. It was perfect. They went through, and I have felt better ever since. My lips are pink now. I'd like to point out that for the whole entire time, like a week, because Arthur's a week old in 2 days, for a whole week, my lips were like the color of my skin, because I was so pale and so weak, and I could not walk, like the whole house. I could not walk the whole house by myself. It was really, just really bad. And it was really really interesting how that worked. But the blood transfusion helped instantly. I was able to take a shower, and then I was released 2 hours later, and I'm home now with my boy. So yeah, so it's really been an interesting experience, to say the least. I think people who say pregnancy is easy and think that delivery is easy is completely wrong. It was not at all what I expected. I expected my labor and delivery story to be epidural, deliver, he's out, we're good. But it was not that way, and I encourage all moms to realize and understand that it might not go the way you expect, and if it doesn't, try to stay strong and try to just understand that the doctor, you know, it doesn't always happen the way we expect it to. But when you hold your baby, it just the world changes around you. I think becoming a mom has been, I'm trying not to cry, it's been very eye-opening. It's been very it's just been amazing. It really has. I really feel more like I've only been a mom for 2 days, to be honest with you guys, because really, yeah, because of the blood transfusion, I was so weak, I couldn't feed him. I couldn't pick him up enough to burp him because I was so weak. But I've been able to feed him, I've been able to burp him, I've been able to change his diaper. It's been a very beautiful experience, and I appreciate you guys following along with me on this journey on my Instagram and on these other videos I filmed. It has definitely been eye-opening. It's definitely interesting. It's definitely amazing to be a mom. And anyway, that's where I'm going to end this video. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, like, comment down below, I guess. But it was really eye-opening. Hopefully I'll get those pictures. Like, it's supposed to come to UPS, like, anytime now from 2 to 6. So hopefully I'll get them in, and, like, I can have a little flash, like, slideshow going, maybe, if I'm good at that. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in my next video. Don't know when that will be, because mom life is hard. But I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, everyone.